Good evening, my name is Brandon Shoemaker. We're going to be talking about aviation today, and I'm going to be explaining why it's far more dangerous to be going 45 miles an hour on a paved road over flying at 24,000 feet, going a little bit faster than Mach 1. Now, this might sound a little bit weird to you, but I'll go into why that is in a second. In the meanwhile, if you have any fears of driving as it is, this probably isn't the best video for you, and maybe try and switch to a different one. Now, if you're okay with driving, this isn't meant to scare you. This is simply just to bring out awareness, make sure that you understand how much safer aviation has become over the last decade or two, all the different systems we have in place, as well as procedures to be able to assure your safety as a passenger. Now, if you have any questions throughout this presentation, feel free to leave any comments below. I'll be able to get back to them as soon as I can. And into that, let's just go into the training aspect of it. So we have, on one end, we have a car accident situation. We have two drivers, both of which had to requirements-ly fulfill 30 hours of driving time and a 25-question exam. Not much. So there's about 60 hours of driving time between the two of them and 50 questions. Nothing. In there, they had a stipulation that they want at least maybe 10 hours of night driving, but again, we have the bar pretty low in Arizona. Of that, Californians say that at least 60% of all fatal accidents are caused due to negligence, due to looking at either devices or trying to send out a text, maybe changing the station on the radio. Either way, it's caused by a distraction of some nature. Now, let's go into pilots as a whole and their training procedures. So with pilots, every pilot is required to receive the appropriate ratings for their mode of operation. So for a commercial pilot that you'll see in your airliners, more chances than not, they probably have 6 to 8 ratings underneath their belt as far as licenses. So the first of which, private pilot, instruments rating, then you can also get your commercial license. From there, you need at least your multi-engine license if you're going to be operating an airliner. From that point, you probably have somewhere around 350 hours under your belt as a pilot, but you're required to have 1,500 flight hours before you could even start at a regional airliner. So to get from the 350 to the regional airliner is really the key. So usually most pilots will get an instructor license, or then on top of that an instructor license, so then you're able to teach other instructors how to be able to teach a student. From there, then also you could get your multi-engine instructor license. So that's another add-on, and then you build up your time training students over and over and over, or doing other operations such as charters or things of that nature. But by the end of your training, you have completed 6 to 8 different federal aviation exams. So that's going into a room, taking a test. That test, depending on the rating, could be 60 questions to 100 questions. And before that, believe you me, you're spending months and months and months preparing for that exam. After you pass that exam, you go to the FAA and you meet with one of their DPs. That's an examiner. That examiner will do anywhere between a 2 to your biggest license, or at least the longest, is your instructor, and that could be anywhere to an 8-hour exam as far as an oral exam. So that's you and him sitting down in that office talking about aviation for 2 to 8 hours straight of him bombarding you with questions until he's satisfied that you know everything in those X amount of books that we have for each rating. After that, you go up in the plane and you do a practical exam. So demonstrating you have all the necessary skills to be able to uphold that license and not be a hazard to anyone in the air, as well as people on the ground, because if you crash, that's where you're going to be going, or if you're losing an engine, that's where you're going to be going as well. So it's all in preparation of that. After that, you have to complete a biannual review. So every 2 years, you have to be able to do this review with the FAA to make sure that you're current. A lot of times with different airliners, they also have their own system where you also have to have reviews with them as well. It's constant training there. Also standardization. A lot of those airliners will have something called stands, and you'll go through that course making sure you're doing everything their way. So the SkyWest way or the Southwest way, or whatever you name the company, their way of doing things. After you get through that, then you're being a commercial pilot and you're doing all your hours in there. Now, in the same situation as an accident or a collision, let's say we have two airplanes. Each airplane is typically manned by at least two pilots, at least in a commercial setting. Sometimes it's 3 or 4, depending on the size of the aircraft, but let's just go bare minimum. Two in each airplane. So you have 4 pilots, all of them with 1,500 hours for each individual pilot, as well as the multiple exam, years and years of experience, and at that point behind it, coming into a collision situation. Now, let's say by some miracle they do not see it, which for all the systems we have on board, it would be pretty evident. We also have something called ForeFlight, which is an iPad on our leg that we're able to look at. It has ADS-B in all the new airplanes since 2020. That was a mandate during that time for everyone to get that installed, so then you can see where that airplane is in relation to you. So it'd be very hard for them to miss it. But let's just say some miracle they miss it. You also have then air tower control or centers, anywhere as far as a controlling agency that is currently in contact with you over the radio. Most commercial aircrafts are on an IFR flight plan, so instrument flight rules. That's just, it's too much to get into. It's just a certain way of doing things that's a little bit more legalistic, more regimented, and you're in constant contact following specific highways in the sky. So we'll leave that as that. It's very nitty-gritty topic to get into. But going past that, you're in contact with them. Those controllers are required to make that separation. Depending on where you are in relation to the airport you're going, it could be 3 to 5 nautical mile distance. Just making sure that you have plenty of separation between the traffic. They'll give you advisories saying traffic 12 o'clock, going at 25,000 feet or flight level 250. And you're able to look for that traffic and keep an eye on it, and you'd most likely have your co-pilot watching that traffic or at least periodically checking on it, so then you're staying in the clear and you know that you're going to be safe. Going past that, by some miracle, that air traffic controller does not see that oncoming traffic that's about to collide with you. Then that's where systems start coming into play. So there will be a system on the air traffic control side advising that controller, a loud beeping noise, hard to miss it. That guy then will let you know, hey, you're about to have a collision, climb and tell the other traffic to descend, something of that nature, or heading off a different heading, such as like turn 210, something of that nature. So they'll be able to divert you. Let's say if that system is broken, which it's required for it to be working, but by some miracle it's broken. It's broken. Inside the aircraft, you have something called TIS or CTAS. TIS is a traffic information system, and then you have something called CTAS, which is in most commercial airplanes. That's going to be a traffic advisory system. The advisory system is going to be able to release RAs, which is resolution advisories. So the airplane will actually tell you how to get out of this horrible situation. It'll send a ping out to the other aircraft. The aircraft receiver will receive it, decipher it, send it back to the original aircraft, and then from that, reiterating it, both aircrafts will know what to do. The first aircraft, aircraft A, is going to look at its advisory and tell the pilot, climb, climb. The aircraft will start climbing. You'll look at aircraft B. Aircraft B is going to have the same indications, and it's going to be in communication with the other aircraft, and it'll say descend, descend, descend. Aircraft then will descend, so it's able to increase that separation in a shorter time period. So that's our system oriented of it. So there's plenty of systems in place to assure your safety. It's really does not make sense how there would be mid-air collisions in the commercial setting of it. In the small private setting, as far as Part 91 we call it, we don't have a lot of these systems. It's more just based off of you exercising good decision making, what we call ADM, so aeronautical decision making. It's a way that we approach different situations to be able to ensure safety of flight, as well as making sure that everything's being followed to company SOPs and standard operating procedures, just to make sure everything is relatively in a good spot. Now, going past that, a lot of people do fear then, how does that work with like terrain or anything of that nature? How how does pilots fly through the clouds and know where they're going? How do they know there won't be a mountain on the other side of the clouds? Well, the key to that is simply that we have a lot of navigational frequencies for us to be able to use. We have GPS, we have VORs, NDBs, we have ILSs, localizers to be able to land safely. There's really no reason for what we call CFIT, so controlled flight into terrain, in a commercial setting, unless if losing all situational awareness, as far as they lose all their navigational equipment, all their senses, and they're lost in IMC, which is instrument meteorological conditions, so they can't see anything out of the clouds. They have no reference. That's the only situation with it, but that'd be 1 in a million even there. Now, going into emergency situations, since a lot of individuals, well, the benefit of a car is if something breaks, you just stop. You can't stop in an airplane. It's very true. But the difference between a car and an airplane is a car, you can let that baby run until it breaks down. An airplane, we have so many different inspections. We have to do an engine overhaul all the time to be able to switch it out, such as there's only so many hours you can put on an engine in an aircraft before you have to change it. Even if it's working fine, you legally have to change it. As well as you have to do a 100-hour inspection, you have to do an annual inspection depending on the company, a progressive inspection, so you're checking it every 50 hours. You have the pilots doing a pre-flight inspection before you're taking off. So the aircrafts are in very, very strong shape. But going past that, if some miracle, well, not some miracle, it does happen. If by some reason there is an emergency situation as far as something breaks, we have something called checklists. These checklists are produced by the manufacturer, and they're meant to help you as a pilot be able to get out of an unfortunate situation and to be able to resolve that problem. Now, granted, pilots, we are required to have a very good information, at least understanding on the systems that we're going to be operating. So more than most times, we have a pretty good idea of what's broken on the aircraft and be able to resolve it or use it in an indirect manner to be able to understand what to do next. But we have plenty of checklists to resolve the situation and be able to bring it back. For that 10% where it's just not charted, we haven't practiced it in the simulator, which we practice a lot of different situations that are really out there, as far as you're flying and then you had your left wing randomly tear off and your engine cut at the same moment and the door opened up as well and you lost pressurization. What do you do? And it's so ridiculous, and it's like you're in instrument conditions too, so you can't even see. It's very ridiculous situations, but we learn to be able to work through those problems and to be able to operate on it and try and make the best decisions that we possibly can. But ultimately, if there is something that's out of our depth as far as that we haven't learned or we haven't done it in simulators, we still have control tower. If it's slow enough in emergency, we could reach out to them, and they have experts on that type of aircraft or engine or that system that they can be able to call and give us a little bit more feedback or mechanics for us to be able to troubleshoot the problem, whatever it will be, and try and be able to get everything as perfect as possible for us to be able to land safely and make a better decision as far as if we need to start dumping fuel because of weights, or if we're allowed to, if we can dump fuel because of the static electricity on the exit factor of it, different things of that nature for us to be able to just kind of take into account and have a sounding board for it. So there's a lot of resources for us as pilots. So as far as with aviation goes, in summary, at all times during flight, you have 5 to 8 pilots or checks and balances working through it as far as the 4 pilots. Then you have all your advisory systems, you have the control towers, 5 to 8 pairs of eyes, basically looking at your aircraft almost at all times to make sure that you're not going to be hitting any other aircraft. In comparison to individuals driving going 50 miles an hour or 45, whatever you want to say, taking a selfie while on the highway and is totally oblivious to the fact that they're about to hit someone going full speed. So again, it's training, and the amount of inattentiveness really, to me, trumps everything else as far as the altitude and the speed and different pitfalls such as hypoxia or things of that nature. The inattentiveness is far more dangerous in my mind than anything else. So as far as driving is concerned, you guys might need therapy for all the trauma that we're driving. So many near-death experiences with some of the people driving out there. But ultimately, aviation as a whole has been a growing community and has been able to make sure that we're maintaining safety at all times and being able to make sure that everything is fine. Now, just to reiterate, the purpose of this speech was not to frighten you or to make you necessarily think in one way or the other, as much as it was more just to inform you, making sure that you have good information in front of you for you to be able to at least take into mind the next time you're debating on flying or just driving. So in that nature, again, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the comments below. My name is Brendan. Thank you for listening to my speech. Have a great day.